You are listening to Unequaled with JC Carroll and Ajay Salveson. But first, our friends, the Painted Roses.
Hi, welcome to the Unequal Podcast. JC Carroll, I'm Ajay Salveson, the Aggie Hall of Famer here, joining us. Fifth episode after we've had four really good ones, but four really fun ones. Now you want to talk about unequal. This is definitely probably one of the most unequal episodes we'll ever had, because what this guest has done compared to me is second to none. Compared to you, I don't know, you guys can battle out your achievements and accolades. Luke Lofthouse has set school records with the most career wins out of 161, fewest career losses at 8, most consecutive takedowns, or at least most consecutive wins at 35, most career wins, what else am I missing here? He also has school records in probably the fastest takedowns too. I have stories about that for you. Luke Lofthouse was an All-American at Mountain Crest High School. A banner hangs in his name inside the MC Athletics lobby. He also was a wrestler at Iowa, was a coach at Iowa, also at Utah Valley University, and he joined us here on Unequaled. Luke, hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm excited to talk to you, man, and share some memories and whatnot, some good, maybe some about really the peaks and the falls of your career and how you rose to be where you're at. Before we do so, we're inside this beautiful spa here, JC. This place continues. Every time I walked in here, and even when Luke walked in here, it's so beautiful, and there's so many wonderful services about the spa that they can take care of you in so many ways.
Yeah, it's a neat place. The women that have put this together were really thoughtful. They were really intentional with what they wanted to offer to people of Cache Valley. It's a great place to show up. They think the list of services they offer is right around 100 different services. So there's something to help you no matter what it is.
Awesome. It's somebody take good care of you too, mentally, emotionally, physically. They have it all for you here. This is a beautiful spot. What's the address, by the way, to this place? We'll get that for you. We'll get that address for you. We're looking back at Tony and Don and whatever. Like,
200 South.
It's right next to Guild Mortgage.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Bottom half Guild Mortgage building.
It's beautiful. Luke, again, we thank you for joining us here on the Unequal Podcast. When you think back on your career, I know you weren't much into achievements and personal accolades while you were, going through the grind. But as we were just talking before the show, and we were kind of talking about your career, have you come to appreciate everything that you've accomplished now with the photos and the medals and the trophies that have hung up in your house?
I think a little bit, right? I'm kind of that guy that just, you do what you're doing now and you move on. And so that's been the way that I've kind of lived my life. The more conversations I have young kids now, so we go back into the school and they see some of those things, they see your name on some of the trophies and they get excited about that. So that's kind of helps me like kind of step back and say, that's pretty cool. And I had an amazing opportunity. I had great coaches, great teammates, and I was blessed that way. And so, I can take a ton of credit for some of the things that I was able to do, but, I was just having fun. And so I can look back now and you read off some of the statistics and things, and I don't know what they are, right? You could ask me how many matches I won and lost, and I couldn't tell you. All I know is that I had a lot of fun and I competed hard, and that's what I try to do every time. So, but yeah, I'm starting to realize there's a lot to appreciate in kind of what I've done in my history.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're too modest, you're too kind. You definitely well spoken when it comes to giving credit to other people, but in the end, especially in wrestling, it's you against the other person. Whoever's prepared the most, whoever's worked the hardest. But what was your interest in wrestling? Why wrestling to begin with?
Well, I think mostly just grew up with it, right? I remember just being young and my brother wrestled, and so we were wrestling tournaments every weekend. And I also remember there was a period where I didn't like wrestling.
Yeah.
Like probably from 5th grade to 6th grade, like I'd go to practice every day hoping that the door was locked and no one was going to show up. It was hard. I was kind of a bigger kid, and I was wrestling kids that were in junior high that were a little bit more into that, mature stage, and it was it was brutal sometimes. But then overall, I think that I love work. I love development. And wrestling's one of those things that it just allows you to do both those things really often.
Former Skyview quarterback and Utah State football walk-on, Ted Stokes has established the #1 bankruptcy law firm in the state of Utah. Stokes Law's playbook is helping individuals and businesses overcome tough financial situations. If you're facing garnishment, repossession, foreclosure, or just overwhelming debt, give Stokes Law a call at 435-213-4771 or visit their website, stokesbankruptcy.com. Stokes Law is a debt relief agency and provides guidance under the United States Bankruptcy Code.
Yeah, you said a couple words that I never associate with wrestling. Fun, enjoyable. To give you a little background on my experience, I wrestled in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And those wrestling practices are the hardest practices of any sport I've ever played. You're literally with your friend, putting a forearm in the back of his neck, trying to put a half Nelson on him, and then they flip over and he does it to you. It's something fun and enjoyable, something that is hard for me to equate with it. But the wrestlers that I've been associated with, some of the hardest working individuals and toughest people I've ever met. At Mountain Crest in high school, you say you don't know your records. We looked them up. We've got a pretty good idea. You're at 161 career wins.
Back-to-back years, sophomore and junior, he didn't lose a match. You went 84-0 as a sophomore and junior
In high school. I mean, that's
incredible.
That's unbelievable. 3-time state champion and Utah State Wrestler of the Year. As you were going through that, what do you think it was that differentiated you from the people you were beating? Why were you so much better than everybody else?
I don't know. I really think that, so from a young age, I had certain goals, right? I want to be a 4-time state champion. Again, my brothers were really influential in that aspect of kind of helped me like see what this is about. I remember when I was a freshman, our first week of practice, our coach would have us write down our goals and we'd hand them in. And I remember the next day after we handed our goals, he came into the room. He's like, goals are some of those things that you really want to do and you want to set them and they're great to accomplish. But some of you may have had some goals that maybe aren't that realistic, or maybe and I don't know if he was talking about me, but I kind of assumed that maybe he was, because at the time, I mean, I was a good wrestler, but I wasn't anything special at that time, right? Like I said, I worked hard. That's, if I can credit any of my successes to that. I really like to work. That's probably why it was fun. Mm-hmm. And so wrestling is one of those things that, I really like to do. I was also blessed that I did other things, right? I played baseball, I played football, and so everything was seasonal. And so when I was wrestling, it was all in wrestling. And when it's only going to be a few months, you can go all in, right? And so you don't get bored, you don't get burnt out, you don't get, overstimulated that way. But as far as, what it was, I think that was it. I enjoyed it. I really did. I never went into practice grudging it, even in college. And college was tough. Mm-hmm. It was a different animal. But still, just knowing that you're walking into something that's really challenging, and then walking out, accomplishing something really challenging was just a really good feeling to me.
Yeah, that's great. So I hang out with a lot of young people, and I get asked by a lot of parents, so, and for me, the goals were something that I set at a very young age too. Those goals, share with us what maybe some of those goals were. Besides a 4-time state champ, what else did you write down? Did it go beyond just high school goals when your coach had you write them, or was it just strictly high school stuff?
So at the time, it was just for high school mostly. Mm-hmm. I had all sorts of goals, right? I played lots of sports. I was going to be professional in everything, right?
Okay.
Whether it was football, whether it was going to be baseball or wrestling, Wrestling is actually kind of the one that there just wasn't a lot of opportunity as far as career and future. And so mostly I focused on my football was going to be my entry point. That's where I was going to go, and I was going to pursue that. Kind of transitioned towards the end of my high school career of where I want to put my focus, and partially because wrestling allowed a lot of self-growth and self-accomplishment, right? Had a really tough senior year of football, just from a standpoint of we were pretty young, unexperienced, and it was really hard. And so, just kind of that was the last taste of football that I had. Yeah. And so it was just like all wrestling from that point.
You talked about your brothers. I don't get intimidated by a lot of people. I'm terrified of your brothers, Cody and Rusty. Can you talk about just more in depth of the impact they had on you as a youngster to be able to develop a mental and physical toughness to when you got into wrestling at Mountain Crest High School, right from the get-go, you were going to be the toughest guy on the mat against anybody?
I mean, I think anyone who is younger and grew up with older brothers, they can kind of attest, like, your brothers they'll harden you pretty fast, right? They'll make you tough. Right. And I was no different. Grew up on a farm, and so got held to a pretty high standard. And from the time I was in elementary school, we're hauling hay and fixing fence and chasing cows, and there wasn't another option, right? And so that was good that way. My oldest brother, Cody, he's actually the reason that I ended up in Iowa. He just he worked late, and he was able to put together some highlight films. This is back before those were easy to put together, right?
Like probably VHS tapes, and the AV room at the high school or something.
Yeah, and it was funny. So I was getting recruited pretty well. Like my senior year of high school, had just a bunch of letters coming in. Took a couple of trips. Took one to Nebraska. Took one to Columbia out in New York. And I had a few more that were lined up. And there's a big national tournament, and it's kind of changed since then. It used to be like the pinnacle, right? They only invited state champions. They only let seniors go. Like it was like the event of the event. Yeah. And so when I finished my wrestling season, my senior year, I knew that wrestling was going to be the route I was going to go. And so at that point, I had a baseball season, and I decided, hey, I'm not going to play baseball, right? Talked to my coach, hey, not going to play this year. Wrestling is like it. I got these things I'm trying to do. Then there's another event in the summertime, Fargo. It's a freestyle event. And I was like, these two are my thing. And I'm going to go, and I'm going to go and
win, dominate.
Yeah.
And get your name out there.
Yeah. Just go make it so, hey, I'm an easy choice for whoever is trying to recruit me. And he talked me into staying and playing baseball, right? Hey, we'll work with you. It'll be great. Okay. And he did, but we had a big doubleheader the week. It was a Wednesday, Thursday, right? We played a doubleheader on Wednesday and then a game on Thursday. Well, our tournament started on Friday. And so weigh-ins were on Thursday, and he talked me into staying and playing that doubleheader, right? Yep. So being young and a little bit naive, I was like, sure, I'll do that. That's great, right? So we take a red eye Wednesday. So baseball game, get to the airport about 9 o'clock. Our flight goes about 11, sleep in the airport, right? I don't know if you ever slept in the airport.
Yeah, there's been once or twice.
Not much sleeping there.
No, there's not any sleeping that happens.
And so then I show up on Thursday at the event. I weigh in, and then I wrestle Friday and Saturday. Well, Friday was a really good day for me. Wrestled into the quarterfinals, wrestled really well, beat some good kids. And then Saturday, kind of the trip caught up to me a little bit. Lost the quarterfinals, just a heartbreaker. One of those ones that, like, you look back and I remember watching with my college roommate. He's like, how did you lose this match, right? It's one of those ones where for basketball, maybe you're in a game and you just have like 20 open looks and you only hit one of them. Right. Yeah. That kind of thing. But yeah, so I didn't perform there that well. I lost the quarterfinals. I was winning by a lot that in like the blood round, right? The round where you're going to be placing and things. And I think I was up by 7 points with maybe a minute to go. And somehow the guy ties it. I don't even know what happened. I can't remember, right? Kind of one of those things you scrub from your memory. Yeah. And then again, even in that match in overtime, I get to the leg and I'm in a great position. And before I know it, like the world's upside down and I didn't know what was going on. And I gave up a takedown. I was like, what in the world happened? So I left there, and most of the other schools I was talking to, they had, they dropped out like, hey, we like you, but, you know, we're not going to offer you any money kind of thing. My brother had sent a video to Iowa and about 10 other schools, and the head coach there, he watched me there. He's like, hey, I really like the way you wrestle.
Yeah.
I'd love to come watch you. You know, can you come out on a trip? And I went, and it was like, that was the place. And so turned out good, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, as a young kid, like I was devastated.
Yeah, it would have been, but you know, you said you stay and play baseball games, and because you're a good kid, you want to make people happy, you want to help your team, you don't want to let those teammates down, and ultimately ends up stretching yourself more thin. But blessings in disguise, open up an opportunity to go to Iowa. Your first year at Iowa, your record did not stand out. What was the first year like? Was it frustrating? Was it did you ever doubt what your abilities or what you could become? What did that look like?
I'll just correct you. The record stood out, just not in the right ways.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fair enough.
No, just to kind of give a context, right? I mean, I lost more matches by double my freshman year of college than I did my entire high school career.
Yeah.
So that's a tough pill to swallow. Really what happened is, again, kind of the same thing. I think I got overextended.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a team guy. I'm a people guy. Like I like to make my coaches happy. I like to make my team like do the best I can for the team. And that's kind of what happened. We had a really young team.
Yeah.
A lot of holes, but we were the number one recruiting class going that year, right? So we had a ton of guys that were really good. A few of my teammates were undefeated through college, like 200 something and like they were just great wrestlers. And so a lot of us were starting. There was a couple holes in the lineup where they just needed people. Well, I got recruited as a 197 pounder, right? I got there probably weighing 215 pounds. And as we're training, we're getting through the preseason, things are going pretty good. Like I feel great. I'm wrestling well. Everything's going well. My coaches bring me in like, hey, you know, we have this opening at 174. Is that something you feel like you could do? And so I'm stubborn, right? And I can do anything.
Yeah.
So I said, absolutely. And like, okay, we'll just take a couple weeks and see if you can start bringing your weight down. Let's see what happens. So I started, and I just super disciplined, right? I was out there by myself, didn't have much for friends. It was school and wrestling. That was it. And so that was it. I was training in the morning. I'd train for our practice. I'd train an hour after practice, and I'd come back for an hour plus every night. And so it was just constant. So I get to the point where, yeah, my weight's coming down. It's going really well. But as you know, right, when you're training, training's great, right? When you have time to train. When you start competing, your training time goes down. And so I actually wrestled really well up until about probably January-ish. I was wrestling, you know, some guys that were good, and I was like right there.
Yeah.
One or two things in the match, and then I'm winning those matches. And then we started traveling, and we're leaving on a Thursday, and we're getting back on a Monday, right? And so instead of having 6 days to train, I have 4, and it just took a toll. And so you have to kind of give and take, and nutritionally, just wasn't the way it needed to be. And so if you want to, like, probably got overtrained a little bit, to where I just didn't have what I needed to go out and really perform at a high level.
No, that's fascinating. That's why I think this is so interesting. Wrestling, you know, it's one of the only sports that you got these weight classes, and to ask someone to cut that much weight, that creates a whole sense of all kinds of challenges. But that's really interesting to me, kind of that backstory, because again, a guy like me that just looks at the records like, what the heck happened? But you understand, but you explained it very well. And even in those matches, what it doesn't show is, like you said, one or two things go differently. That goes in the win column, not the loss column. In that time, were you able to maintain your confidence in what you were doing and your abilities, or was there any moments of self-doubt?
I would think, I mean, there's going to always be self-doubt, right?
Yeah.
When you're not getting what you want, when you're not performing, you're not winning, there's a little bit of self-doubt. What I was doubting is probably different than maybe what most people would, right? I didn't really doubt my skills.
Yeah.
My weight was a big one, right? My training was hard. Those were two pieces that I didn't have a ton of confidence in what was happening, and I could just feel myself going down that hill the wrong way. But yeah, there's a hit to confidence. But like I said, it was just training for me. Get in there and train. And I think probably my training got replaced by weight cutting.
Yeah.
You know, my focus was like, hey, how much am I over today? How much do I have to lose? And so there just wasn't the right focus. At the end of the year, I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. Like I could still wrestle. I knew that. Right. You've done it for a long time.
Yeah.
You can still do that.
But you say it so nonchalantly. Like I've been around athletes my entire life, and I'm around people now, and you're just like, no, I didn't. There was a hit to maybe your ego, but your confidence. Just telling you, it was always there. I knew my skills were still good. That's a unique skill that you have. I've been with a lot of people and around a lot of people that they struggle when things go bad. Their confidence takes a huge hit, and they go down. And it's really hard for them to get back up. I don't know if you have any insights or any advice to somebody that does take a hit to their confidence, how to get it back, how to recover it.
Well, I think, again, going back to like my past, right? Like I was unique that way. I wasn't just a supreme competitor athlete my whole life. I was really athletic, right? But especially when you go into wrestling, I took some time where it was not fun, right? My very first junior high match, I remember my brother was 4 years older than me, and his last match of his junior high was against this really big, strong kid, muscled up, right? And again, I'm 12 years old, okay? They're 14, 15 years old. My first match was his last match. Kid's bigger and stronger, and I was like, oh man. And it lasted about 37 seconds, right? And I was on the wrong end of 37. And so I think part of it is like I just experienced so much through like my growth that like I'd seen all the pieces, right? And it was, I'm not gonna under exaggerate, it was a dark time.
Yeah.
Like it was dark. Probably the hardest time of my wrestling career, my life, right? Separated from my family, 1,200 miles away, didn't have a ton of friends, and wrestling was it. And when wrestling's it and it's darkness, it's pretty hard. But again, like I'd trained in such a way that I knew like all those things are still there, right? But it's just got to bring those back to light, and that's the hard part.
Hi, this is Karen Nielsen with Guild Mortgage in Logan, Utah. Beyond great rates, we're committed to ongoing customer service even after your loan closes. We want you to experience knowledge, communication, and amazing customer service for a lasting relationship. Make Guild Mortgage your trusted partner.
That's awesome. Do you know Dr. Rich Gordon?
Absolutely.
Have you hung out with Dr. Rich Gordon? You really need to. So he's a professor of Utah State that taught for a bunch of years.
Incredible, man.
Mental aspects of sports. A lecturer all across the country, 400, he's published 400 or 500 articles. He was at Mountain Crest last week or a couple weeks ago and talking to us, and kind of what you said, you had without knowing it, you had a very advanced mental game when it came to sports. He kind of asked that question, what did you do when things didn't go well? Well, you went back to moments when you did have success. You remembered those moments and what helped you be successful. You started relying on your training to get yourself back to where you wanted to be. So we need to hook you up with Dr. Gordon.
I'd love that.
It'd be an awesome conversation. He'd love to talk to you as well.
Can I ask, just with everything you went through that first year, that was the only time you ever had a losing record in your collegiate or high school career, just once. And then you go and serve a mission in Zimbabwe, Africa, and you and I graduated together, but you and I were not close in high school. You didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of friends. We kind of liked it that way. We kept our distance. I was your water boy. My job was to hand you water and get the heck out of the way. But I think on our mission, we kind of connected a little bit more because I was in a pretty bad spot, and you were, trying to do your work in Africa, and I was in Cleveland, Ohio. Like just two totally different ends of the spectrum. And I remember I was like, man, I can't do this. I'm not having any success in the work here. Can't do this. And then you sent me an email back, and I still have it to this day. I have it like laminated too. I'm not joking, because the letter was like 2 pages long. And he's like, oh, sorry, man. You keep doing what you're doing. Things are great here in Africa. People don't have a lot of water. They don't have food. The church is struggling here, but we're doing great. We're having a great time, and we're going to keep working hard. That positive mentality and going through what you did in Africa, how did that, I guess a two-part question. One, how did that help you when you were coming back from your mission and going back into Iowa and into wrestling? And two, how much growth did you see in yourself mentally and emotionally within yourself during those 2 years in Zimbabwe?
There's a lot there.
Yeah, sorry.
Let me try.
I'm so sorry.
Really break that down and do it in a way that maybe makes sense. But going back kind of to the original question, like what happened to my confidence during that first year? I don't think my confidence took a hit because I knew that my body was like over exerted, right? Like I just knew that's not who I was.
Right.
And so it was easy for me to kind of look back like that's just a product of what's happening, right?
Yep.
Biggest hit to my confidence was when I went and told my coaches, like, hey, I'm going to go serve a mission, right? And do you want to know what the head coach said?
Please, I'd love to know.
I figured, right? I thought this was going to happen, okay? And I was like it really it cut me deep. It really did. I was like, what in the world? What do you mean, right? Because when I went there, I committed to 2 years. Like, hey, I'll wrestle 2 years, then I'm going to go on a mission. They knew I was going. I knew I was going, but it was like a 2-year timeline and then 2 years and that they kind of like that, right? They hey, we need you. We just know kind of our team. We're young, whatever. And so I went in. I was like, hey, I'm gonna serve a mission. And he's like, I figured that was gonna happen, right? And that was kind of more to me like that kind of like, oh, hold on. It made me think a little bit like, well, he doesn't really believe that I believe in myself right now a little bit,
Right.
and nor should he. I mean, he's gone through a lot of different things, and with like professional sports and the higher level of sports, some people they get into it and they can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Right. It's just part of it, right?
Absolutely.
And so that was probably the biggest hit to my, like, I was like, it made me doubt a little bit. Then I went on my mission, and anything after what I'd just gone through that year is going to be easy. I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Right. And my mission was fabulous. Right. But it was hard. The people were great, but the circumstances were awful. They just, just seeing people live that way was hard. And just knowing what I came from was like, oh man, it's almost unfair. And so it made it easy that way. My mission set me up for a lot of things, right? Taught me how to work hard again, right? Taught me how to have fun again.
Mm-hmm.
Taught me how to serve. Taught me how to look at a big picture. And that's kind of probably what you saw in that letter, right? Like, hey, it's bigger than we are, right? Doesn't matter what happens with us and whatever, but what we're doing, it's going to have an impact way, way beyond the time that I'm there in Africa or you're there in Cleveland. But then again, when I was there, like I had a lot of frustration. My coaches that were Iowa, they got canned.
Yeah.
Right. They got fired. They hired this new set of coaching staff. So I'm kind of like in this
limbo.
Yeah, this limbo stage. Like I didn't know what was going on. I tried to write my old coaches, hey, what are you guys doing? Where are you going? Like, but their emails got shut off because they were university emails, so I couldn't get any contact, right? And you're in Africa. It's not like you can make a quick phone call or nothing happens quick there. The internet was hard to come by, and so it just wasn't. And I remember being like pretty uncertain, like what's going to happen. Wasn't sure. I had some friends who were wrestling at Utah Valley. One of my good friends, Ben Carey, was the first All-American there. He was like writing me letters and recruit me pretty hard to go down there. And I just wasn't sure what was going to happen. But then I remember praying about it, and I wrote an email to the new coach, said, hey, I don't know what your plan is, but I have full intentions to come back and wrestle at the University of Iowa. Is that on your, right? Is that cool with you, basically? Yeah. And he wrote back, said, hey, everything's good. We'll see you when you get back. I was like, awesome. And so at that point, it was like, again, blinders on, focus on my mission, and then go and do the work, right? But kind of fast forward, the hardest part, like the most confidence-wrenching part for me was probably like a year home from my mission. Right. And that was probably more of where, again, I was in a tough spot, wasn't performing really well, had some other things going on, but that was hard for me. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does.
But
was that the same for you? Hey, you looking for something fun to do this summer? How about you go to Bridgeland Adventure Park, located in Garden City, Utah. Bridgeland Adventure Park has all sorts of adventures from ages 2 to 92. A 4-levels ropes course with 73 events, a giant swing, a 450-foot-long zip line, or get on a tube and head down the 350-foot slide. They're also accepting business corporate groups. You and your office want to get out of the daily grind? Sick of staring at your computer for 8 hours a day? Well, bring the company over to Bridgeland Adventure Park. Enjoy some delicious food, a snow cone, a fun time with your coworkers, and lasting memories. Bridgeland Adventure Park is located at 722 South First Light Drive in Garden City, Utah. For more information and questions, go to blap.rocks. That's BLAP.rocks.
After you, sir, I mean, you come home and you're one of the, I mean, I think because you left after your freshman year, right?
No, I was straight out of high school
To your mission?
to my mission.
Really?
So I didn't. So I came back and had 4 straight years at Utah State. But I returned from my mission August 4th, and so I had August, September, October to get ready for the basketball season.
Was there any adjustment period that you had to make that you're like, gotta get my body back into this, I gotta do this, conditioning and all that?
Yes, there was all that. Because I do like what Luke says. Like, I was laser focused on doing what I was supposed to do as a missionary, and I was the same way. I left on my mission, mentally. I put my basketball shoes, my basketball in the very back of my closet, and I touched the ball 3 times in 2 years, and it was on a concrete court with a wooden backboard in Chile, and I just knew if I did everything I was supposed to do there, I'd come back and change my mindset. Put all my time, energy, and effort into being great at that. But I remember my first time up here at Utah State was probably August 8th, 4 days back from my mission. We were at a church playing pickup ball with the Utah State guys. I remember it's like mentally I could see where I wanted to go and how to get there, but my body could not move me there. I was like, come on, body, get in that seam. Get over to that elbow, shoot a jump shot. It just was like not moving there. So every single day, that entire season was like, this is a chance to get better. Shoot around or, pregame shoot around where it's just a walkthrough wasn't a walkthrough for me. It was, all right, I'll walk through. Then me go down here. I'm going to shoot 300 shots. Warm up 15 minutes before the game wasn't okay. I'm just going to warm up. It was, all right, I'm going to shoot game shots and get better.
You're looking for the best place to grab yourself a pizza and, of course, entertainment? Look no further than Ruby's Pizzeria and Grill at 795 East, 1400 North. Ruby's Pizzeria and Grill has your salads, delicious pastas, creative pizzas, all that including watching some good games on TV with your buddies. Ruby's Pizzeria and Grill also has a Thursday through Saturday 9 p.m. to midnight menu. That's right, 9 p.m. to midnight, Thursday through Saturday, you get the delectable items. Our producer, Adam Lurcher, and myself went there. Well, Adam had the chicken fingers. I had this beautifully made gourmet hot dog with a delicious pretzel bun wrapped around it. Most importantly, Ruby's Pizzeria and Grill has the best customer service. Their employees were there to take good care of you, led by their manager, Thad Willis. So stop by Ruby's Pizzeria and Grill and let them know that the Unequaled podcast sent you there. 795 East, 1400 North in Logan.
Luke joining us here on the Unequal podcast, one of the greatest wrestlers, if not the greatest in state history, probably next to or just behind Cale Sanderson, of the former guy at Wasatch. Luke, everything seemed to kind of click your senior year at Iowa, All-American year. What was it? Was there anything before that year that you felt like, okay, this is going to be the year, I'm starting to figure things out? Did things start to come slower at you? Like, what was that feeling like, leading up to that successful year?
I think it's kind of twofold. One, I talked about how there was the most difficult time for me. It wasn't right after my mission. I got back August 1st too.
Okay, there you go.
I went back out to Iowa about 10 days later. I think I went out like on the 13th or something like that. And so just right into it. And I can just feel what you're saying, right? My body's supposed to be here, but it is not. My mind's there, and I just can't. But that year was I worked really hard to get back into it, probably the same way as you, right? Practice wasn't practice. It was like, hey, I'm getting better. And I'd committed to myself, because remember, I'm kind of that people-pleasing person, right? And I committed to myself, hey, this is a year for me just to get back into shape and get ready to go. And I remember about halfway through the year, I was wrestling pretty well. And my coaches are like, hey, we really need you, right? And I kind of go back to this that's like that threshold of, if I jump in, what happens, right? Looking back, maybe if I would have jumped in, it would have accelerated my pace a little bit, possibly. But I didn't, right? It's like, hey, I'm committed to me right now.
Yeah.
Right? I love the fact that maybe I can go and I could go compete, but I just don't feel like it's my time yet, right? When I step out there, I want to be ready. And so I went through that year and it was great. I wrestled well, had some good wins, performed fairly well. And through the summer, I had like the best training I've ever had in my life, like top of the world.
Yeah.
No one in our room could wrestle through that. Like everything was just clicking, right? Kind of one of those things. I don't know if you had that experience when you like just everything all of a sudden came back and you're like, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
I'm him again.
Yeah.
And so I had that, and so we got a couple weeks off for summer, so I came home and I was feeling really good and going into the season, like just kind of looking at our schedule and what opportunities were there. Like I was real excited. And then I had just goofing around with my brothers, right? We were out playing basketball.
Wait, basketball's older brothers and wrestlers are never a good combination. I'm pretty sure I can figure out where this is going.
Well, it actually didn't happen with basketball.
Okay.
We were going to lift. We were Mount Crest, and we were warming up playing basketball, right?
Okay.
And so, but I went into lift, and I was just at the end of one of my sets, and I did something, and I tweaked my neck somehow, and it was like instantly I knew it was different than anything I'd done. But I'm kind of stubborn, and I kind of like pushed stuff off, and so I did the same thing and kind of went for a long time. So from August basically till December of like not really addressing it, and then had a period in December where I was like, you can go watch the match on YouTube against Iowa State. The guy was great, right? He ended up being a couple-time national champion, Olympic champion, but in that match, like I couldn't do anything. He just grabbed my arm, and basically all my nerves on the backside of my shoulder had kind of like shut down. And so there just wasn't anything that I could do, no power, no nothing, right? And then that period, that was like the hardest for me. And coming out of that, leading into my junior year, I was still kind of dealing with that for a little while. And that was hard because I felt like I could perform, but I couldn't. And I was trying really hard, but it just wasn't quite clicking the same way. And I got frustrated. That was like super frustration. And then this is kind of, you asked about like what made the difference for me. I wrestled in the lineup most of my junior year, right? There was me and another guy, and we were both pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. He got hurt early on in the season, broke his foot, and then had surgery. And so he's recovering. So I'm in the lineup. I'm wrestling pretty well. I think my Big Ten record that year was like 5-3, and the matches I'm losing, they're like competitive, right? I'm losing 3-2 to like, the top 4, 5, 6 guys in the country. So I'm there, but just not quite over the hump there yet.
Yep.
We go to Minnesota, and I'm wrestling a guy that I've wrestled a bunch of times, and he's tough to wrestle, like just very, very crafty, right? Just does things that, and end up losing pretty bad, right? For the scene that it was and what it had to be. Lost 7-0. And I remember like walking out of there, and my coach was pretty upset, rightfully so. And he pointed me to the mirror, and my mouth was all bloody, and he said some things that like really hurt, right? And they were honest, and they were probably all true, right? But they hurt me, and I remember I was really upset, right? Fast forward, my teammate comes back. They put him in the lineup. He goes and wrestles for the Big Tens and conference and the NCAAs, right? And that was hard for me, right? Like I just felt like, oh man, I put in a lot of time, and I was really close. But I remember being at the Big Tens. They took me with them, right? It's like a warm-up partner and a teammate and things like that. And I just remember being there and going through that, and in the moment, like to myself, like nobody, like just dropping all opinions of what people think of me, right? Like I was going to do it for myself.
Right.
And that was the big thing for me. I also had a coach that was awesome, Terry Brands. He resurrected like a lot of my wrestling, if we're being honest. And so those two things together became really powerful for me. And that's what kind of accelerated it. And so come back to your question. So basically from early March, I couldn't compete because I was too old, right? to compete on some of these like college freestyle events. So I petitioned to go to like the world trials for our age group in college. And I remember I just trained up to that point, and it was in June. And training was good. But when I was there, I went and wrestled, and I beat some really good guys, right? All-Americans that year, and I just wrestled pretty well. And that's kind of like that thing that kind of propelled me forward. And from there, it was just like all steam ahead, train, work, recover, and just it was all about hey, go out, perform for yourself and do it for yourself. And that was like the biggest thing, kind of like really opened me up and kind of let me go and perform at a high level.
That's awesome. You said that coach resurrected kind of your wrestling. Was it words that he said? Was it the time he put in? What was the catalyst for the resurrection?
I think, and anyone who's played sports at a high level, it's easy to become like paralyzed by information.
Yeah.
Right. You're
Analysis paralysis.
Yeah. You're evaluating yourself all the time and you're trying to dig too deep into things. And really what he did, he simplified wrestling for me. Right. He made it really fundamental. This is what your thought process should be. This is how you should think. Right. And then we spent a ton of time. Right. I spent more time with him than anybody over that 2-year period. And he was very honest and very direct, but super loving and super understanding. And that's kind of what the difference was. We had a really good connection, and, we could really connect and train and communicate that way.
Luke, you're married now. How many kids?
3 kids.
3 kids. How'd you meet your beautiful wife? It was at Iowa, right?
Yeah, it was.
She was I think she was rowing, right? Oh, she rowing.
No, she was. She was on the rowing team. We happened to have a similar class together. Well, it was the same class, right? We were in a Spanish class together. And no, it's funny, like all great things come out of some semblance of struggle and darkness, right? And that's kind of what that was for me. When I was injured and I was going through that frustration and difficulty, that's when I met my wife. And so had I been full speed, healthy, doing all the things that I would have never even tried to do it, but turned out to be great. She turned out to be great. Really, she was another catalyst to my performance, right?
Yeah.
When you get married, life just simplifies.
Yeah.
And as an athlete and as a student, the more simplicity you have, the better. And so she held me accountable. She was very helpful in my growth that way as well. But so we met in a class, took a ballroom dancing class together, and kind of flourished our love there.
That's how you know how desperate he was. If you took a ballroom dancing class.
Or that's how convincing she was.
No, yeah.
Hey, he's smarter than us. I don't know what this guy's doing in college. He goes to Zimbabwe. He's taking Spanish classes and ballroom dancing. I mean,
living the dream, if you're asking me, man. I would have loved that in my school career. Luke, we got to shut it down pretty soon, but I got to tell you a couple memories of Luke. I was the water boy, as I mentioned, at Mount Crest High School, and we played our senior year for football. We played this team called Hunter. Best defense probably in state history. That night, I think all of us saw the spirit world. At least had a glimpse of it that night. Every single one of us. Luke comes off. He took a swing route pass, gets clogged. I mean, feet, hands, body, all in the air, right? Hits the ground. Comes up. I swear to you to life, he is looking out the ear hole of his helmet. That's not a joke. He runs off, and he goes, water. And I was like, okay, I'll give him some water. I give him some water. He takes one slug, spits out pure red blood, just all blood, chucks it back at me, and he goes running back onto the field. And like our trainers are like, Luke, get back here. Like I think about like what Mike Williams was telling the story about chasing you down with a sprained ankle.
Yeah,
that was Luke. I mean, he just never ever gave it. It was incredible. And then first wrestling match, I only saw one match of Luke, and I was mad. And here's why: because I was so pumped to see Luke wrestle. Best wrestler, packed house. It was at our gym. Luke goes in there, and I'm watching him warm up, but I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a good match. 26 seconds later, the kid was pinned. I went there to watch a 26-second match.
Yeah.
I was livid. I was like, dude, like, play with him, toy with him, like, tickle him, pinch him. I don't know, don't just pin him. In 26 seconds, he was pinned. And that kid didn't, like, get off the ground until Luke was off the mat. He wasn't moving. But, yeah, one of the greatest competitors, and I said this to him before. We had a conversation a couple weeks back, and I think about you when I think about Luke. The competitiveness of what you guys is what makes you so great. It's what makes you one of the greatest athletes in Utah State athletics history in any sport at all whatsoever. And I think of Luke and his competitiveness, and like to watch him on the field and on the mat, and the competitiveness he had just makes you so unequaled from anybody else, maybe one other guy that would be Ryan Zimmerman, who we're going to have on here in a couple weeks. But, I mean, just, it's incredible. So thank you for bringing that out and always, make it. I feel like you made me better as a water boy, which is weird to say. But even more so just as a human being, thanks for making me a better person because of who you are. Because without you, I don't know where I would have been. So appreciate you more than you'll ever know.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I get a couple of rapid fire questions.
Shoot, yes, I love these.
All right. One, favorite moment.
Favorite moment.
That stands out most in your athletic career.
So, remember my bad moment in Minnesota?
Yep.
Went back there the next year.
Yep.
My brother, I had the privilege to wrestle with him, and he was a couple weight classes before me. He lost a close match, and their fans, wrestling fans are different, right? And you're really close, and so the fans were just on it, bad on it. And I was wrestling the same guy.
Yep.
Right. So it's just this whole new, we're back there, right? Full circle. And I remember that I wrestled really well, did some things that I hadn't done yet that really propelled me forward. And I just remember walking off that match and finding those fans that were hooting and hollering my brother and just giving him a little love that. That's probably not looking back, that's one of my favorite moments. Just being in that, and my match still the dual win.
Oh,
so it's just some things.
Even better.
Yeah, so that was a pretty good moment. Yeah. Nationals was a good moment too. I wrestled well. My family was there. It was pretty fun. That's another one that really locks in.
That is awesome. Today's Valentine's Day date.
Ooh.
Advice. What are we doing? What are you doing? You're on the spot.
Valentine's changed a little bit when you have kids.
Okay.
Right? So our Valentine's with my wife, my kids. My wife makes really good chicken parm.
Okay.
That's my favorite.
Yep.
And so we always just have a little chicken parm Valentine's dinner.
Awesome.
Yeah, just at home.
That's awesome. Look, you inspire me. I've seen your name up there at Mountain Crest in the banner, and I've asked a bunch of who's this Preston Lofthouse kid. I think there's Preston Lofthouse and Tony Brown up there. This has been unbelievable. Thanks for taking some time with us and talking. Really, really cool.
Yeah, one of the best, Luke. Really. It's been awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys.
So Unequaled podcast here. Appreciate all our sponsors that put us make this podcast happen. JC Carroll, I'm AJ Salveson. Thanks for all listening.
Oh, I think I might have made one too many a mistake. If you help me find my way, I promise I'll do the same.